So, it's Friday evening and I was faced with a really quite a first world problem, and that was I wanted a cocktail but I wasn't sure if I wanted a Manhattan or an old fashioned. Well, it turns out the Guardian came to my rescue. I don't get the paper delivered because I don't live in the United Kingdom, but I do read it online, and there's a cocktail of the week in there, and this one grabbed my attention. It's called a Larry's Horn, and it's named after something to do with the speakers in a restaurant owned by someone called Larry, and there's a restaurant called Larry's, and it's something to do with that. But then I looked up Larry's, and it turns out that that's about a mile away from where I used to live when I lived in East Dulwich, and this is in Peckham. Peckham, of course, is made famous in the BBC comedy show called Only Fools and Horses, where Rodney Trotter would get called a plonker on a regular basis. But that's kind of by the by. We're going to try this, and it's a bit tricky because the measurements are all in milliliters and I only have fractions of ounces and ounces and so on. So I'm going to have to try and get it right and hopefully give the instructions correct. And it turns out there's a slightly complicated way to do this, but I'm going to give it a try and see what we've got. So it is like I said, it's in between a Manhattan and an old fashioned. So it's a rye whiskey drink. The recipe calls for 40 milliliters. I don't have that measurement, so I'm going to call that a short ounce and a half. So just pour that in a little bit shy. And I'm not going to pour this into a shaker, but I'm going to put it into my mixing glass, and I'll show you why in a moment. It also calls for a half an ounce or 15 mils of Cynar, our favourite artichoke aperitif from Italy, like so. And then also a half an ounce or 15 mils of sweet vermouth, and I'm using once again my Antica formula, which I do quite like. Add that sort of sweetness to balance the artichoke bitterness of that Cynar. And then it calls for something interesting. I've wanted to use these for my black walnut bitters. Just 2 drops of that. I'm going to do 3 actually because I'm that kind of guy. If you don't have these particular bitters, you can probably use Angostura bitters instead. And I'm just going to swirl that round a little bit. I'm going to put some ice. So this is where the instructions got kind of interesting. I'm going to put some ice into my rocks glass like so, and pour half of this in there. That's about right. And stir that for 5 or 6 seconds to apparently get the correct dilution. That's about 5 or 6 seconds. Pour the rest of this in there, like so. Add some more ice, like that. Of course, my favourite garnish, which is a maraschino cherry. I'll get one of my Luxardo cherries like this, put it on top, but then it also calls for a spoon or 5 mils of the cherry juice, kind of just drizzled on top. There we go, and we'll do that like so. And you can see how that's sort of trickles down the side, makes a really interesting look. Let's see if the taste matches up. And yes, that really has solved my first world problem. Cheers.